Our aerial journey across the picturesque Balearic Islands of Minorca begins in the northwest of the island at Ciutadella, before heading for the coast and flying past cliffs, beaches, small resorts and clear blue seas. At the main airport, we encounter a group of military helicopters coming in to refuel, and close by is one of the many prehistory sites which cover the island. More modern defences on the small island of La Mola once protected the capital, Mahon, and its harbour. Flying north up the east coast are a number of old tower castles and villages turned into resorts. And we end our journey in the northeast corner of the island at the lighthouse on the end of Cap de Caballeria. Minorca is the most eastern island in the Balearic group, and is also very different in its landscape from Ibiza and Mallorca. The island has no high mountains, and in fact the highest point is just over 1,000 feet. However, the coastline is one of the most unspoilt in the whole of Spain. Minorca is the second largest of the Balearic Islands, at around 270 square miles. The permanent population is about 95,000, and this dramatically increases during the summer months with the thousands of holidaymakers who come and stay in the many resorts around the coast. For those people interested in history, then the island has much to offer. The story of Minorca is one of invasion, and Great Britain gained and lost the island several times during the 18th century. They wanted it for the strategic importance of its harbour, a place they could base their Mediterranean fleet in. The Romans understood this naval importance as well, because their ships were constantly attacked by pirates based on the island. So, in 121 BC, they invaded, and made it part of the Roman Empire. They named the island Minorca, meaning little one, as opposed to Mallorca, meaning large one. However, the island's story stretches back much further than the Romans, as even earlier settlers back in the Bronze Age understood the island's important position for trade across the Mediterranean. And as a result, the whole island is covered with prehistory monuments. These ancient people, from what is known as the Taiotic culture, built stone structures, temples, and elaborate burial chambers. There are roughly 2,000 of them spread across the island, and in the north they can be seen close together. These ancient sites make Minorca one of the largest open-air museums in the world, with the highest concentration of megalithic monuments in the Mediterranean. On the northwest corner of the island is Ciutadella, Minorca's second city, and once its capital. The city was originally founded by the Carthaginians way back in around 200 BC, but by the 4th century had become Christian and had its own bishop. In the 10th century, the city, as well as the island, came under the control of the Moors, who occupied much of Spain. By the 12th century, it was back in the hands of the Spanish. This pattern of invasion and new rulers was set to continue. On the 9th of July 1558, a Turkish invasion force under the command of the infamous Barbarossa Pasha attacked the city and slaughtered most of the inhabitants. Those left alive were taken back to Turkey and sold as slaves. The city was destroyed, and the only building left was the 13th century cathedral. In the Plaça das Born, once the parade ground for Moorish troops, is an obelisk commemorating the Year of Misfortune. In 1708, the British became the next occupiers and moved the capital to Mahon, on the opposite side of the island. However, the bishop refused to move, and so Ciutadella still remains the religious capital of Minorca. Today the city is a popular place with summer visitors who come and walk along the harbour in the early morning to see the fishing boats arrive with the day's catch for all the waterside restaurants. To the north of the city is the Ippodromo di Ciutadella, where the 200-year-old popular sport of trotting races takes place. Close by the racecourse, and constructed close to the rocky inlets and coves, is a purpose-built holiday development called Los Delfines. And on the south side of the city is Cala Sant'Andrea, which boasts a fine beach and also becoming a popular place for holidaymakers. Heading inland from Ciutadella, the landscape is dotted with talliot circular structures. Many have been restored and can be explored and climbed. No one is really certain what they were used for, although suggestions include burial chambers, watchtowers, and storehouses. But as no hard evidence has been found, and they date from a time before recorded history, perhaps they will always remain a mystery. Recently, the Camí de Cabais, a network of paths around the coast, have now been joined together, forming a great circular route around the island. In the past, many of the paths were used by smugglers and the customs officials who tried to stop them. The views across the cliffs and down to the shoreline with the brilliant clear blue sea are quite stunning. One of the longest established resorts on the island is Cala Emporta. Once again, it's very popular with British visitors. On the cliffs are a number of private villas, many of which are let out during the summer months. Another reason for its popularity is that it's fairly close to Minorca's airport, and a place for us to refuel. However, we have to wait our turn to land, because ahead of us are a group of military helicopters on a training flight who are also waiting to refuel, and we all have to wait for a jet to land before making an approach. Around 1 million passengers a year pass through Minorca Airport. Both scheduled as well as charter aircraft land here. A slower way of getting to the island is by ferry from Barcelona on the Spanish mainland or from Palma in Mallorca. But most people come by air. The airport was built in 1969 because the runway of the old airport, situated nearby, could not be extended, and that meant new and larger jets were unable to land. Today, Minorca Airport handles around 13,000 aircraft movements a year from its 16 gates. Next to land are the 4 military helicopters on a training exercise. The aircraft type is a Bulco 105, which has been in service since the late 1960s. The Spanish Army used the helicopter both as an anti-tank attack aircraft as well as for scouting and observation. It was the first lightweight twin-engine helicopter in commercial service. Well over 30 countries have the Bulco in service, and in many of them it is used as an air ambulance. The 4 rigid fiberglass rotor blades were a world's first, and it means the aircraft has a high maneuverability. In the United States, an acrobatic display team uses the Bulco to perform loops, rolls, and other stunts, which are normally only associated with fixed-wing aircraft. In 2001, production ended, and the last to be sold was in 2009. However, it will remain in service around the world for many more years to come. Two miles to the east of the airport is one of the best preserved Taliot settlements on the island, Trapuco. One of the main features is the well-preserved Taula. This is a T-shaped construction, much like Stonehenge in Britain. No one really knows what they were used for, but some sort of religious use must be a good guess. In the settlement is a round tower construction surrounded by a restored star-shaped base. The site appears to have been abandoned during the Second Punic War. More modern historic sites can be found close to the capital city, Mahon. And most are military, because during the 18th century the island was fought over between France, Britain and Spain. In 1710, the British built Fort Marlborough, named after the British general John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough. The fort was subject to many attacks, but was never destroyed. Because the port at Mahon is one of the deepest natural harbours in the world, it is a perfect base for a naval fleet operating in the Mediterranean. It has therefore been heavily defended for over 300 years with various styles of military forts. After Spain finally regained Minorca in 1802 from the British, they began to fortify the island of La Mola, which stands at the harbour entrance. By the mid-19th century, the Spanish began building the great fortress of Isabel II, which was rebuilt several times. With its angled walls, redoubts, loopholes for the cannon, it became a formidable fortress. Firing positions along the coast facing the sea ensured a warm welcome for an enemy ship. And on top of the island were the living quarters and headquarters for the fort. With better firepower from new types of artillery, the old fortress gradually became redundant. A more effective form of defence was bigger and better artillery, and in the 1930s, two Vickers 15-inch guns were installed at the highest point of the island. One of them is about to fall over the cliff, but the other is open to visitors. The importance of this deep natural harbour had been recognised since classical times, when the island was occupied by the Carthaginians under Mago, the brother of the great Hannibal. Mago gave his name to the city and harbour of Mahon. The harbour is 3 miles long, and the depth varies from 45 feet to 90 feet, which means almost any size vessel can use it, including all the private yachts sailing between the islands and mainland ports. They can make use of the marinas around the harbour. During most of the 18th century, when Britain occupied the island, their naval fleet would have anchored in the harbour to await orders, be resupplied and carry out repairs. And the harbour town of Azcate was originally built by the British and called Georgetown, after their king. This was the headquarters of the occupying force, and much of the architecture has a strong British influence. Long after the Spanish regained the island, they renamed the town Azcate, meaning the castle, because of its proximity to all the castles and forts guarding the harbour. The town also has another claim to fame, as it is the most easterly town in Spain, and so the first to see the sunrise. In the early 18th century, the British moved the capital of the island to here at Mahon. The reason for the move can be seen today, as large cruise ships are able to moor up alongside the city's quay. Passengers need only take a short walk to explore the city and its historic buildings. and they follow in the footsteps of the great British Admiral Horatio Nelson, who stayed here on his way back home following his victory over the French at the Battle of the Nile. The city has a distinct British feel to it, which is not surprising, as they occupied it 3 times during the 18th century, and left their mark in the simple style of houses they built, often to be found with green shutters. The narrow streets of the old city create deep shadows, and this helps keep the buildings cool in the hot Mediterranean sun. Dominating the city's skyline are several beautiful churches, including the Iglesia de San Francesc on the northern end of the old city, and in the centre, the imposing Iglesia del Carme, a former Carmelite church, which is now a cultural centre as well as a marketplace. Away from the historic centre, Mahon has a more modern feel, with apartments and hotels to accommodate the growing number of tourists. Mahon also has a culinary claim to fame, because when the French admiral Armand de Vignereau de Plessis defeated the British Navy in 1756, he returned to France with a new sauce he had discovered on the island, mayonnaise, which was later named by the French mayonnaise. To the north of Mahon is the Albufeira das Grau Nature Park, which includes wetlands, a long shoreline, and a number of farms still using traditional farming practices. This diverse landscape also includes over 100 species of birds and animals. On the coast in the nature reserve is As Grau, an old fishing village which has been turned into a small resort. The diversity of this landscape played an important part in the decision of the International Committee of UNESCO declaring Minorca a biosphere reserve in 1993. At strategic points on the coast are a series of defence towers built in a design which can be seen in many countries around the Mediterranean. These defence towers were first constructed in the late 17th century to protect the island from pirates and a possible Turkish invasion. They both acted as lookout towers as well as forts with cannon mounted on the top with living quarters underneath. They were so successful that when the British attacked a similar tower in Corsica at the end of the 18th century, it took 2 ships to do it, with a heavy loss of life on one ship and great damage to the other. The tower was manned by only 33 people. As a result, Britain copied the design and built new defence towers around Minorca's coast, and indeed exported the forts back to Britain's coastline, where they were known as Martello Towers. To the north of the Albufeira Nature Park, the coastline is home to a few resorts, built into the rocky coves and inlets. And on a perfect crescent-shaped sandy bay is the resort of Arenal de Castell. It's renowned as one of the liveliest places on the island and the only place with a number of large hotels. Further north is the remote pretty fishing village of Fornez, which attracts the rich and famous, including the King of Spain, Juan Carlos, who comes for the famous seafood dishes served in the restaurants overlooking the harbour. On the most northerly point of Minorca is the Cap de Caballera, a narrow rocky spine jutting out into the sea. This is one of the most dangerous parts of the island for shipping, where it has been recorded that more than 700 ships have been wrecked on the high cliffs over the past few centuries. After public pressure, a lighthouse was eventually built in 1857. The light used a pressurized oil vaporized system, which was not the most reliable and was eventually replaced by electricity when it became available. Today, the lighthouse uses solar power and batteries. In 2005, the Cap de Caballera Eco Museum was opened in the building under the lighthouse, where visitors can explore the cultural and natural heritage of the north of Minorca, a dramatic and beautiful part of this magical island, and a perfect place to end this journey.